Um, Thank you everybody for showing up. I know it's been a very interesting and long day, and there's some an exciting talk coming after me. But I would like to introduce you to a new research project I've been involved in, and it was based upon a proposal that I did for a project that will be launched in the Frankfurter Buchmesse later this year in October. And the subject is about reverse italics. I would prefer to call it reverse italics because you will see some different terminology throughout the different talks. For instance, backslant, contra-italic, sloped Roman, and of reverse sloped Roman. But the term reverse italic I would prefer because it refers to italic being a cursive script, so it refers to handwriting, and it also refers to the direction in which the script is written. But the terminology you will see within the type specimens and everything is changing throughout the ages, basically. Before I continue, I would like to bring you back into a state of mind of the 19th century, which is completely different from all the information that we receive today. You have to imagine that you're in the streets of London or Paris or any other major or big capital or city. And all advertising is actually done on huge pamphlets or posters in the public field. There's almost no other means of communication in terms of advertising products and things to buy or things to do. It's not only about theater performance or products to buy, but sometimes to fill in your taxes or other information. And most of it happens like in public spaces, as you can see in this printing of a book of 1974. And you can see that it's one poster next to the other. So it's almost like complete chaos. So what each one of those advertisers tries to do is actually to attract attention. This you do with big typefaces that need to be seen from a distance. And as you can see here, italic is used, bold typefaces, fat faces are used. But a particular style starts to occur from the middle of the 19th century. And if you look closer to the specific print, you will see that there's like already some strange novelties happening in the site actually. And these are actually the reverse italics that I will be talking about. The very first one that I could retrieve so far is a printing type proposed by Vincent Figgins in 1815. It's pretty large size, and it's actually a printing size in the style of the Didot Bodoni style, and that's actually used as a wood type on the different folders. I discussed the research with Michael Twyman, and he was kind to provide these images that I could use. Just to indicate that it's like the Marlborough is the typeface from Figgins in its one of the first uses in 1832. Here's a close-up of the specific poster. I mentioned the Didot style at the moment, or the Didon style. There were also already some sans serif wood types being used in a reverse italic style, or backslant in this case. And here's an indication of 1871 in another pamphlet for actually sale of property. Attracting attention you can do on different ways. And the use of italic is one specific style, but the combination of both, I think, is so special that if you would see a poster or a pamphlet in the streets, that it will get noticed. This is a very eccentric, grotesque even, that's shown. Apparently designed in 1838 by George Nesbitt. And the image is courtesy from Alastair Johnston, and it's the only image I could find in a book that he published, Alphabets to Order. It doesn't always have to be in your face or big bold typefaces. It can also be subtle, being meant as a secondary weight, or in this case, an a tremendous amount of typefaces. It's only at the bottom of this completely wooden engraved poster that actually it mentions which illustrations, who actually did the illustrations in this specific pamphlet. The only printing tab you can see is at the bottom, which mentions the name and the address of the actual printer, but the whole poster was actually carved in wood. Other techniques also introduced the backslant or the reverse italics, and this is an example of the title page of music score for popular opera or operettes, and you can see the use of the reverse italic in this case. Lithography, for people who don't know, is made by stone, so there's no printing or metal type being involved in the process. It was kind of a popular and everyday sight in the streets of those big cities to see this reverse italic. Nowadays, there's kind of a revival happening in some ways, and I'll explain later that in some areas it really declined a bit because it has some technological connotations to handle it. But it was kind of popular in the 19th century that even people who would produce stencils would use this specific style on their name cards. Eric Kindle was very kind to provide some original images that he took in the United States for his research on stencil type. So here is the name of one specific stencil maker, even an advertisement in which you can see the reverse italics being used to explain that he cuts letters in brass, the printed versions of some of these name cards. And even in the catalog that this specific stencil foundry produces, you can see on the top left that the word loft is also used in one specific connotation. I'll come back to this a bit later. A more contemporary approach or use of this stencil technique is done by Bart Vollebrecht. He should be in the audience, or he was definitely attending the conference. And he did like a contemporary experimental type, which was influenced by the shapes of nature near the seashore. So the movement of ebb and flood. He actually produced like the metal type in die case, and he could even make different patterns on different techniques, being influenced by the actual elements and the movement of the sea. All this was done in the Netherlands, the Hook of Holland, and here you can see the actual printouts of this lovely stencil type. Specific use of reverse italics, apart from the posters, which was randomly being used, you can see actually in the use of stone engravings of gravestones. This specific cemetery in oak wood features quite a lot of these beautiful examples, and it mainly is used to actually indicate either the word born or dead, to indicate when the person died and was born, and sometimes also some epigraphs. Here again you can see that it's specifically the Didon style with a big contrast in between the letters that was used as a type style, but also some less contrast typefaces were used as epigraphs to explain a little bit more about what the person was. The first actual body text is to be situated in the States. That is the earliest that I could find in this research. And that was produced by the George Bruce Type Foundry of New York. They refer to it as English backslope. And it's specifically striking to me that most of the text faces were produced by American type foundries. Here you can see like the English backslope close up from this, but also the type foundries took inspiration from the calligraphic hand. And here again, it's not just about sloping a Roman type. They actually were inspired by other scripts or techniques in writing. Here it's called calligraphic. The other one is called paintbrush, in which you can see kind of a thick modulation at the bottom, which reflects the pencil. But on the other end, also ornamented and 3D typefaces were used more as a decorative or ornamental style to show up at the end, to attract attention. And others, I'm not sure if this is quite clear, also reflect the handwriting. Calligraphic script is the name of this specific typeface from the Boston Type Foundry. And the reason that I'm actually putting attention to this calligraphic style is that, I'll come back to this in a moment, is that it was for me a big surprise to see that even talented calligraphers from the Italian Renaissance, like Tagliente, were actually already experimenting with or showing examples of reverse italic handwriting. In most cases, it was those sample of model books of alphabets were indeed to show the skills of the specific scribes. Tagliente, in this case, it's an example from 1562, only shows one, but a more elaborate display of ornamented and special reverse italic scripts or handwritings was written by George Boxey in the Mira Calligraphia Monumenta, which was published in between 1561 and 62, or created. The illustrations that you see on the pages were made by Joris Hoefnagel, but not during the time that Boxey was alive. It was done 15 years after he died. So it just that it's, in a sense, it actually was, he was asked to illuminate the pages of this specific calligraphic book to elevate the status, because it was a prestige work. Boxey did not only write or calligraph one backslant or reverse italic, I should say, but there's none less than 7 different back reverse italic styles. So if people want to draw inspiration, I would recommend to find either a digital copy of this specific writing manual or model book, or even go and look up the actual manuscripts. And even nowadays, like lay people and everybody who's writing, it really depends on their own personal style of handwriting, maybe being left-handed, maybe being right-handed. The use of the pen or the tool of the pencil that influences the style of their own handwriting. So there's no specific reason why some people would or would not normally write or ordinary write in a reverse italic hand way, but this is again to show that it's really, it can be just the nature of someone to write in this specific style without being like technologically sloped or slanted. And even nowadays in some shops or restaurants, here is a still from food series from Rick Stein, Long Weekends. It shows like the display of a restaurant in Iceland that even has 2 specific reverse italic styles to attract attention to 1 or 2 specific dishes. Like in hieroglyphics or paleography, there are specific manuals that actually explain to scribes, to letterers, to people who actually do ornamented texts, how and when to use a reverse italic and what slope it should be. A specific other use for applying the reverse italic hand you can see, for instance, in those technical drawings or working drawings from architects, from people who are drawing plans from urban cities. And also in this specific manual, you can see actually the guidance in how and which slope to use for which specific project. So a few further examples. So you see in the top, the freehand printing is more formal. If it should be more freehand for captions, it is produced very fast. So you see a different style. The bottom one with is more leaning towards the right, basically. I found this specific lettering set and I completely have no clue how to use it. So if anyone from the audience can explain me how to use it, would be very good. But even in this lettering set that actually needs to be used, the actual rulers to write the different sizes at the bottom, they are all shown in a reverse italic style. In this specific type specimen, unfortunately, we have no idea where it originated from. I think it's a Bruce example, because Steve Heller could not tell me exactly where he found the sample. He was kindly gave me permission to use it. But it's a italic shaded. Why is this interesting? I find is because I found the use of it both in on the left side, this specific printing specimen, which shows specimens in this specific style or printing type, but also in a title page from a book that was produced in Belgium, in Brussels. So it's interesting to see. I haven't gone that far in the research to see how that specific printing type traveled to Belgium, but it's something else to investigate too. But it's important for the audience to know that reverse italics are not the same as rotalics. Reverse italics that I'm showing or that I explain, the baseline stays, the lower part of the characters stay on the baseline. With rotalics, it actually rotates each of the characters within a specific angle, and you can see at the top, effective, how each of the characters is actually just rotated. A beautiful example was given to me by, or like an image, by Nick Sherman, who actually shows this specific rotalics, reverse rotalics, I have to say, because the normal rotalics are the way that italic script is going, in this specific packaging for liquid veneer. But again, a contemporary use is this specific visual identity for the transport company Van Dievel in Belgium. So you see that even these specific styles are even now in use as well. We now go towards the end of the 19th century, so you can see the influence of the Art Nouveau, also the floral and decorative styles. So here again, it's not just using a Roman type and just slanting it towards the reverse side of the writing system, but it actually is influenced by the way that the style was in fashion in that specific period. Schelter and Giesecke in Europe was one of the first to produce this specific style of reverse italic typefaces, but the same you can see again in the US with the typical name Pizza, referring to the Leaning Tower, obviously in Italy. Even in that way that also fractions were added in that specific style, so it was quite popular to be used in a sense. We might not all agree with the style and that it might be old-fashioned or in a sense you being used in a specific way of graphic design, but they even went that far to actually patent this specific typeface, which you can see at the top right above the type specimen. The editorial graphic design area as well makes quite a lot good use of this reverse italic style. Roulette is one of the mid-20th century examples, but also Aldo Novarese was experimenting with reverse italics to offer to the editorial world. Peño and Fils and Sons, Fils, I have to say, also included specific grâce renversée in their specimen book, very detailed and refined serifs. So it's again like, is it slanted, is it not slanted? But all major type foundries had at least one specific reverse italic or sloped italic to provide. This is an example from one of the linotype typefaces, the pen script, in two styles. And this was found in an American type specimen book from the Stratford Press in New York. I'm not sure if it's digital yet. Different technologies, different techniques. Also the advertising world, commercial world that made use of typewriters introduced in this way the backslid italic. This specific typewriter is actually a Verityper, and it's quite an easy, is a close-up of this specific style in which you can immediately see the mechan or the mononidier style of the typewriter fonts. But this specific typewriter makes actually use of slugs of fonts, and one machine can provide two types of typefaces at the same time. So within the same typing of the text, of one-page typing of the text, you can immediately switch to two different typefaces without changing the slugs, basically. There is one chapter in my PhD on Tibetan that explains the whole technique, because Typer also had catered for other writing systems than Latin. And I'm not sure if it's still being used today. Reverse italics, however, were put in a maybe a bad daylight from the 50s onwards, because it had a connotation with a specific style of typesetting. Although Hutchins explains in British Printer that these are one of the novelties of the new typographic evolution, that we can use different lenses and different ways of angles to actually modify typefaces through those different combinations. And the phototypes make use of like these types that are being projected through lenses and mirrors, so that they can even easily be modified using one specific Roman type. Alice and Savoy, who talked a few days earlier, has done some amazing research about typefaces. So if you want to know more about this, it's better to talk to her than to me about this. But each of those type specimens actually provided ways of manipulating the typefaces using this specific type technique, basically. They were offering a set of film fonts or not, but they also explained like, okay, we can rotate it, we can condense it, we can stretch it, and I can hear some people in the audience already fringing right, because for real typographers or type designer or graphic designers, I don't think it's really done. So that's why I believe that from the 1950s onwards, the period of using reverse italics declined a little bit. Here you can see techniques, except for those specific typefaces that were offered by these phototype producers. Here is a very psychedelic, funky smoke typeface called Smoke, which was in use, for instance, in this specific menu, but more iconically in the logo and the albums of the Doors, like we are in the 60s and 70s, so obviously. There's a recent campaign for a rescreening of a film from the 1970s, Belladonna of Sadness, and also the new campaign uses this smoke typeface to actually promote the screening of the film. It's a pity that James Edmondson is not here, because he's the lover of the hobo typeface, and I believe that he's going to kill me showing this. But even the Rider phototype, offer like the backslant version and the manipulated diagonal version of this specific type. The main reason what they would advertise to actually using the reverse italic is that the unfamiliar slope of lettering arrests the eye and compels immediate attraction. It's because people are not really used in everyday life nowadays, or the 60s and 50s, to use it. But yeah, that's the reason why they would promote using this backslant. One of the only typefaces, sans serif typefaces that I found is as a reverse italic is one of the styles from Venus type, from Berthold Phototype. And it's Venus links cursive, or Venus reclining, or Venus penché à gauche. That's one of the only sans serif text faces that I could retrieve. But also the Letra sets, the transfer type, offers a style, so it's in use, so it's really being popular as well. Most people might know the main areas in which reverse italics are being used, and even nowadays in Germany particularly, but also in the Netherlands, the origin of using reverse italic in a more applied way is to do with cartography and mainly hydrography. So all the main waters and rivers or lakes or gulfs or anything that is to do with water that is being shown on a map of, in this case, the map of Europe. It's one of the largest map maps around and still available because the condition is very poor. It's a map from 1877 and it measures 2 meters 55 by 3 meters 10. That actually shows, indicates like an early use of specifically for waters and rivers and lakes to use a reverse italic style. Another example I could find is in Belgium, in the studio of Castar's printing press. They have a have a large map of Italy, in which you can also see like outline versions of reverse italics to be used as to indicate the water areas. Günther Schmitz, I've been in touch with him, and he was very kind to provide parts of his research on his website. That actually traced back the origin of 2 typefaces that were produced by Linotype. And his study traces back to actually guidelines for indicating the different waterways on German maps. Here you can see some examples from these early, probably lithographed printings, but these are the guidelines in 1993, that even today there is a specific use of using only reverse italic headlines for big waters, combination of capitals and lower cases for other kind of waters. So that's apart from being used like in the gravestones or the graveyards, the actual applied use of reverse italic nowadays. The origin that I mentioned of the 2 is actually the origin for 2 linotype faces, which is römisch rückwärts liegend and cursive schrift pro rückwärts. Rück being back, so the reverse way or the backslant. 2 different styles, but these are one of the earlier digital typefaces that have been being used with then a specific origin of this cartographic style. We can see reverse italics almost everywhere in the street and everywhere in Europe and the world. Basically, as an example from a street from a shop in Aachen. Here is one from Spain. But also specific brands are so iconic just because they drew attention from the use of their specific reverse italic style. Here you can see the cigarette paper Risla, rice paper that's been popular, that makes use already from an early stage on of the reverse italic style in their logo. They recently redesigned the complete typeface for an update of their visual identity, and it was even used by some musicians to put on the front cover of their albums, so you can see at the bottom. Another specific iconic style, which unfortunately is no longer around globally, but in Dublin there is still some tower record shops available around in the city, and they too were so iconic not only by the use of colors, but also by using this specific reverse italic style in use. But also more contemporary, more popular, like Wolverine, one of the X-Men figures. Again, iconic, the logo from the 1980s, Back to the Future, which in a sense indicates a direction in which I would actually promote using the typeface, not in a sense that it needs to go back to show the backslant or to reverse it to go to the future and the italic for future way, but the direction indeed can indicate an actual style, typographic style to be used in a more how should I say, guided way and freedom way. Here's like an parody on the same logo. It's immediately visible, back to the nature. But also the logo of the Rainbow Warrior makes use of this specific reverse italic style. I asked a few contemporary letterers and typographers and type designers whether they would have problems like drawing or designing a reverse italic, but most of them, you can see some lettering by Marina Shakur on the right and an image from Ghost Lettering, because it's an old sign in New York, in Pennsylvania, by Troy. But they were saying that indeed it's just a matter of practice, and for some it's just a natural way of doing this. A more applied way again is the logo for a taxi company in Canada. It's the Calgary International Airport taxi service that makes use of reverse italic in their logo themselves. But in my eyes, a more useful way of using a reverse italic is shown in this specific style, the Policity of Bristol. So if you look at the right side of the car, the logo is inclining towards the left, like reverse italic. And if you look at the left side of the car, it's a proper italic, and it's actually the direction in which the car is riding. So whether it's good or not, it's like to see how it's done. But that's an optional way of showing direction in use by using this specific style. Logo identity for a brasserie in Belgium. The last several years, and I'm talking from around 2007 until now, more and more independent type designers and type foundries have been designing quite a number of reverse italics, and you can see a few examples here. Oban by Garrett Haig, LL Brown with recline variants. I also show some of the type in use. Nitro and Turbo by Huffler and Company. A Bodoni a reverse italic by Jan Hendrik Arnold. Zahner typeface, more experimental. Cottingley from Ryan Hughes, which is also maybe more innovative in a sense, and also striking in the way that it's different than the others. Spindity, a logo from James Edmondson again, more wavy style. In use by Stephanie Specht for some, but these are rotalics and not reverse italics, combined with rotated italics. Work from a Mexican typeface designer, letterer, and also Origin Super from Condensory from Production Type, which originated from designing a typeface for the Carrefour. It's a supermarket for packaging, in which like the origin of the country had to be the same type size as the actual food. It was expanded as well, but it's great to see that more and more type foundries and type designers are offering this specific style. For that reason, that I really would advocate, especially with the new technologies and the new open type variant fonts, that people actually use this typeface or produce these typefaces to actually show a bigger freedom for type designers to be used either in designing road signs or other kind of directional services, but mainly to actually offer like an extra service to the users and graphic designers rather than having like the traditional styles. I think if technologies and word processing companies who produce word processors and text editors also use this specific style of reverse italic, that we can even have more bigger freedom of typographic use. As you can see here, the titles of the series, the Get Down, find their inspiration in the street art and use actually the tagging of some rappers in the titles. And here's some applied reverse italics in posters from art schools. Here is one from RCA in London, more artistically, but it's actually used in a good way, and I think it's a new direction that people could go into without being restricted. Here is a recent example from the Type Media exhibition. So it allows a flow, it allows a freedom, it allows an extra kind of dimension. Obviously, it's the graphic designers who produce this design work that actually need to handle it in a proper way. I'm not saying that you have to use it like this or others, but it's to do with good design and bad design. The most recent one is this new style that will be designed for the belly typeface by Roxane Gatteau, who recently won the SOTA award. Sorry? Yeah, sorry, the SOTA Catalyst Awards. So she's also working on one variation of a backslant, and like other type designers, it's not that easy to actually do so, because the stress of the strokes, the angle, it's not just the same as designing an italic typeface. But it can be used for more specific reasons. Here you can see just one sticker that I found on one of the mailboxes that I received. Like if it's combined with writing systems that go from the right to the left, they obviously need an italic that goes with it. I'm not saying that you need to use this specific way, but the way that they use it here, I think it's not designed very properly or beautifully, the Israeli post.co. I'm not talking about the Hebrew letters, I'm talking about the backslanted version of the Roman. So I think that there's also a way there to actually cater for good typographic use. I focused mainly on, in this specific study, on the Roman script or Latin script, and because I don't want to go into the discussion of backslant or italics being used in other writing systems. However, you can find some of them in the streets of Calcutta. If you see the bottom part of this lettering in Bengali, I'm not saying that it's good or not, but it's like lettering being done in the streets, or this specific advertisement for Malayalam. It's mainly to do that I don't want to go into this discussion for other scripts and focus on the Latin script for this specific topic. I would like to finish by showing just the first drafts and samples of the type family that I designed, or the initial stages for the Frankfurter Buchmesse, which this year has as guest country Flanders and the Netherlands, and they approached me to design a specific typeface for that purpose. These are just the initial sketches. The rest will be revealed in October when the actual Frankfurter Buchmesse is happening. But I would like to thank you all for your attention, and I really hope that both people in techniques as type designer continue to actually design these reverse italics just as an extra weight for you to be used in typographic and graphic design style. So thank you for listening, and hope it was okay.